Hello, and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. Hey, we got a big time plan this afternoon, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to start out with a quick trip to Nosara, Costa Rica. Then we're coming to Northeast Florida, working our way down the state, up the West Coast. We'll stop at Islamorada to get the word from the Keys, and then out to Panhandle. And there's a couple of things I want from the guys tonight. Excuse me, I'm still dealing with this cough. Of course I want their fishing report, but here's what I want to know. We're all lifers, all of us on this podcast, and I want to know if the habitat that the boys are fishing in is in better shape now than it was when they started. Now, the natural answer, of course, is to say no. Oh, the good old days were so wonderful, and the water was clear and the fish were everywhere. Yeah, not so fast. Okay, I can tell you, speaking for Northeast Florida, that 60 years ago, the St. Johns River was filthy. It had raw sewage in it. It had creosote coating the top of the water where we couldn't even fish because it was so thick and it would gum up our lines. So let's be careful. And if you want to talk about offshore, you better remember we've built over 200 artificial reefs in the last 50 years. So there's a lot more to consider than what you might think. So let's get it rolling. We'll start it off with a quick trip to Nosara, Costa Rica. I know Craig Sutton's got a good marlin report for us. Man, I love starting out in Nosara, Costa Rica. In fact, my family started making plans today. My accountant calls me. He says, my family wants to go. We all want to be in Nosara. I'm hoping to be there in August. But let's check in with the purveyor and see how the fishing is in February. Are you with us, one Craig Sutton?
I am absolutely here, Ricky. Fired up too, buddy.
Yeah, what's happening?
Had another grand slam today.
Come on.
Had a good catch. Good
what?
Catch, man.
What?
Two different marlin and a sailfish. Two different marlin species.
Blue and a stripe, maybe?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
And a nice stripe, too. A good-sized stripe. Real good size. And the blue was no baby. It was a good fish. 350, 400.
How big's a big striped?
200.
That's a big one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But,
I tell you what, I lost one years ago, probably 25 years ago off Acapulco. That was probably a world record strike.
Whoa.
I couldn't believe how big he was. I don't even want to say how big he was. I don't know what the world record was, but this was a big boy, man. Gosh, he was a big boy. But,
anything to go along with the marlin and sailfish?
Yeah, the proverbial, gaffer mahi and nice mahi. I sent you the video of that free gaff 30-pound mahi last week. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I looked at that video, and I'm sitting there saying, that's a nice fish. It was probably 30 pounds. I wonder why Craig sent it to me. And then I suddenly realized, he wasn't hooked. He was following his girlfriend in, wasn't he?
Well, and I talked to Elias about that on Wednesday night because I was curious. I saw it with a different technique, and he was doing a little different method. And he learned from some other guys that to sink the gaff down in the water and wait for the fish to come by close. And if you look real good at it, you can see how he's got the gaff already down in the water to keep from spooking the fish. And he just reaches up and pops him, and he got a great gaff shot on him. He really did. And, it was a pretty good-sized fish for a free gaffer.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on board with free gaffing because I've seen it messed up too many times, and then the fish has got a gaping wound in it. So your guys are experts. They know what they're doing. Children, do not try this at home.
Absolutely. Put that caveat on the video. Do not try this at home. But I thought it was an interesting technique, though. I really did. I think that the next time I get gutsy and I figure I'm going to try to free gaff one, I'm going to do that same method.
Gotcha. All right, here's our question for tonight, and I need a quick answer from you, okay?
Okay.
The habitat you're fishing in Costa Rica, the habitat now, not necessarily the numbers of fish, but the habitat, in better shape than it was when you got there, or is it deteriorating?
I think it's about the same as far as the habitat, because Costa Rica is just one big reef.
Yeah.
So you're not going to put any artificial reefs down there and make a difference and stuff. And the reefs, as far as the quality and stuff, they're alive and well. They're doing really well. So I think that, and it shows by, some of these crazy catches. You saw that big snook we caught in the bay where the boats are moored up right before sunrise. And the guys have had to kind of pull off that because we're so busy right now. But that fishery, I believe, is going to be there for a while, and it's going to be interesting to kind of explore it a little further.
That's cool. That's cool. All right, Craigie, please tell me we can check with you next week.
Shoot, I'll be looking forward to it, man.
Me too, brother. Thanks so much. Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise Fishing. Now, we're going to hit Northeast Florida and one Captain David Voorhees. David, are you with us?
Hey, Captain Ricky, I'm here, buddy.
You sound like you're in a much cheerier mood. Our weather improved a little bit this week, didn't it?
It did. You know, we've sort of been on that roller coaster, really good weather and then really, really bad weather. We've seen our share of northeasters, a lot of wind, but I tell you, the last few days have been absolutely phenomenal on the water. We had a nice cold winter this winter, which really cleaned our water up, which we haven't really seen this in years, and everybody's been talking about, how cold it is. And I look at them and I try to remind them, you know, what we've had the last 7 or 8 years is not normal. This is our normal winter, what we're having now. This is where it should be. You know, we should have a couple of 2 or 3, 4 freezes a year, you know, in the wintertime. We just haven't been getting those lately. It's been so unusually warm. But we have been able to set up for some really good sight fishing with this clear water. And it's really been, it makes me feel great when I can go out there and I'm really seeing lots of fish. I always knew we had a really good redfish population. You know, I've always felt like, you know, we've done that species right, and there's plenty of them. But man, every day I get off the water and I feel better and better. I'm like, oh my God, I saw so many fish today, so many fish, and it's been great. It's been fantastic fishing. Some days they want to cooperate. This weekend they fed really good. It's almost like you get a couple of good days and then you'll get an off day. But getting the fish to bite can be tricky this time of year. But when you find those days, they can be absolutely gangbuster like we had yesterday and the day before. David,
I'm thinking that fishing's kind of like wives, you know. Some days they cooperate. Some days it's just tough, you know. Hey, I got a question for you. You're like me. You're like me. You're a lifer. You got decades fishing out of here, not years. Is the habitat that you're fishing in Northeast Florida in better shape than when you started, or in worse shape than when you started?
Wow, Rick, that is a great question. I really like that. And I'm going to start off with something. You know, I've moved to Florida about 40 years ago, and I always loved it. We came here as kids, and I fell in love with Florida from a very young age. And Florida in 1979 came up with this thing called, at then we called it stormwater management, where a lot of people with some good sense decided, you know what, we cannot just have all this drainage, all this water flowing right into our water system, whether it be the rivers, the creeks, whatever. And they started this system of what they called stormwater management. We were the first state to come up with this. So, you know, here's to Florida. It's a great thing. And you'll see wherever you drive all over the place what we call retention ponds. And let me tell you about these retention ponds. It is fantastic because normally that water that's coming, when we get these heavy rains, you know, Florida's known for our storms, a lot of that rain flows into the rivers, the ocean, the Gulf, whatever. And a lot of that water is heavily, heavily polluted. So I'm going to say it is a lot better, Rick. And I really believe that. I really believe it's a lot better. But with that being said, I am only speaking for Northeast Florida. I know there are areas up and down the coast that are having problems. And when you look at those problems, what does it seem to be, Rick? Runoff, right?
It is runoffs, David, and it's a lot of insecticide and it's a lot of stormwater like you're talking about. And I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I'll give you the offshore side of that equation, David.
Okay.
I don't think I think I've seen the water cleaner. I've seen some times of great fishing, but you also have to remember when I started out of here 60 years ago, we had one artificial reef courtesy of Adolf Hitler, and we were building the second one. Well, now there's over 200. So I would have to say that habitat-wise, we got a lot more to offer the fish than what we did. Although everybody's initial response is, oh, it's not nearly as good as it used to be. Well, be careful with that, because there are some things that are a whole lot better.
I agree with you, Rick. And if you start looking at individual species, I think there are some species of fish, as far as fish management goes. Now, I know fish management is a good indicator of how your environment is doing. So I think we have some species that we have done properly. We have got it right. And I think the redfish is one of those.
I agree.
And there are certain species I think we don't have it down. We don't have it right, correct. And I believe the trout, I've always been a component of slotting the trout. Do not let anybody keep a trout over 20 inches, period. I don't care if you're a commercial guy. I don't care who you are. You must let these big trout reproduce. And if we do that, we will see our trout fishery come back to what it was in its days of glory.
Couldn't agree with you more, David. Great report, and I think you're spot on when you talk about the habitat. The habitat itself is doing well. We got to dial in some better management. Thank you so much, Cap. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Man, I'll be sitting right here waiting for the phone call.
Thank you, David. Captain David Boyes.
All right, Ricky.
All right, kiddos, it's time to hit South Beach and check in with the mayor himself, Captain Alan Sherman. Alan, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's warm up here. It feels good. I'm calling it springtime, even if it's not yet. That's how I am.
Well, it's getting close.
Getting closer. Our winter lasts about 6 weeks, and it feels like about 10 months. Tell me about your fishing and what's going on in Miami.
All right, so right now we're getting nailed by some heavy winds. We had some cooler weather yesterday, got down into the 50s. For us, that's cooler. And now the winds are getting ready to switch to the northeast. It's 15 to 20, going to pick up to 25 to 30 the next 3 or 4 days. So it's going to be tough fishing. Yeah, for sure. Buckle up is what you got to do. Mm-hmm. The guys offshore, they're the ones that are going to hurt the most, because that's where it's going to be the roughest and the toughest to catch fish. And it's been tough here all week. There's been a few kings, a few sailfish, an occasional dolphin. The few days that before the winds blew, the swordfish bit during the daytime, and the guys caught some dolphin out there. But now with the winds high, that's not a possibility. A few wahoo came over the rail, but the guys are going to be hiding this week with all the wind. A little bit of bottom fishing, some vermilion snappers, some yellow eyes on the bottom, 240, 260, a few genuine reds, some small ones were caught, almacos and amberjacks, mostly squid fished on a chicken rig. And, the guys are just trying to put a catch together. That's all they can do. In the bay, we've had some action from some juvenile kingfish, some Spanish mackerel, a few small groupers, a few, undersized muttons, and a few undersized snook. And, the thing is almost all the fish we're catching right now are small. We haven't seen any quality fish recently. And hopefully, that'll pick up as we get closer to March when we start seeing more schools of bait fish come through, which right now has been kind of tough to come by.
Yeah, we look down that tunnel in March. We'll be able to see a little bit of light down there. Just headed our way. It'll say it won't be long, boys. You guys will be back where you want to be. Hey, Alan, I got a question for you. You're a lifer like the rest of us. You've been fishing that Miami Beach area forever. Is the habitat better than it was when you started? Are we cleaning the water up any? Is it worse? How do you stand on your habitat?
So it's a tough subject for me because I get kind of caught up on it, but no way have we caught up on it. I mean, no way is it getting better. We really need to get a handle on it and quick, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. Seagrasses are literally gone. You go out there now, there's very little manatee or shoal grass, and that's where all the sea trout, that's where the shrimp, the pinfish, the crab, that's where all the little stuff, lives. And the predators, they're just not there because there's nothing for them to feed on. Not only that, the sea trout's a fish I grew up on, and it's one of my favorites. It's good for customers. It's good for me. And they're just literally disappeared. And I believe, strongly that one of the reasons that they're not there is they don't have the habitat to hide it. So bottlenose dolphins looking for mullet, can't find a mullet school, they eat the sea trout. Big snook looking for a mullet to eat, can't find a mullet, they eat the sea trout. So the bottom line is the sea trout's a troubled fish here. And, we're having a lot of water issues. Septic tanks leaking, they need to be fixed, removed. Sewer systems need to be, put in place. And then all that runoff coming from Lake Okeechobee and the farmlands and then the fertilizing on the golf courses, it's tough. The mangroves aren't doing well. The seagrasses aren't doing well. And our fisheries are suffering because of it.
I hate to see that. Now, Alan, as far as offshore is, I know up here in Northeast Florida, it's actually gotten better because we've sunk off the Northeast coast. We've sunk 200 artificial reefs.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
Well, that's not all reef. That's structure. I mean, that's every time you sink a tugboat, that counts, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But when I first started fishing here, we had one artificial reef, courtesy of Adolf Hitler, and we had one that was being built at the time. Well, now there's 200. So I would almost have to say offshore up here, it's better. Is your offshore habitat, I know your fishing's not as great, but is your habitat better, or is it suffering too?
Well, we don't have the natural, live reefs that we once had. So the artificial reefs have helped, but they've also hurt in a sense. I'm a lifer. I've been doing this for a long time. We used to have amberjacks on the reef. Down in the Keys, they always had amberjacks on the reef. And I'm talking 40, 50, 60 pounders.
Had them up
we
here,
used to get them all the way into 20 feet of water.
Had them up here.
On the party boats.
Yep.
You don't ever see that anymore. The only amberjacks you'll find today are on the wrecks.
Yep.
So,
but I'd have to ask you.
Fish. Yes.
I'd have to ask you, is that overfishing or is that because of the habitat, you think?
No, I mean, it's partially overfishing because the amberjacks got hit really hard way back in the 70s. They were commercial fish to death, and the numbers have never come back since then. But, it does, it's a tough question because there's two sides to it. And I always play both sides. Artificial reefs draw everything to them at some point or another, which makes them easier to catch. So that's good for the fishermen, bad for the fish. If there weren't artificial reefs, those fish would have to scatter out on what's left of the reefs out there. I mean, they would do that because that's all there was. They would continue to spawn. They would continue to grow and replenish themselves like they do today. It's just that they would be so much more difficult to find and catch, giving them a better chance. So when you put a reef down, an artificial reef down, if there were fish on the reefs scattered across 5 miles and you drop a reef, a deep reef in between them, it draws fish from the reef to that spot and congregates them. If you know where that reef is, you can do some damage to them.
You don't think all those tiny barnacles and then all the growth that is on a reef, then you don't think that sets up its own ecosystem? You think that draws from the fish that were already there?
You're right. It does. It definitely does. But it's a double-edged sword. Right. You want it to be easier to find fish. You want to be able to catch fish because you don't want to go out there and not catch anything.
Sure.
But on the same note, you don't want to take all the fish that are there,
right?
Which is easier to do because they're not going anywhere.
Yep. You make
and they're in small areas. So, this is a complex fishery, and it's going to need a lot of work to sort it out.
There's no easy answers. Alan, as always, we appreciate your report and your viewpoint so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
Thanks, buddy. Captain Alan Sherman from Get 'em Sport Fishing in Miami Beach. Oh, is there any place I'd rather be in Florida right now than Islamorada? It is warm down there, at least warmer than it is in Jacksonville, I'll bet you. Let's check in with one Captain Brandon Storen. Bean, are you with us?
I'm here. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm doing great. Tell me how life is in paradise.
Well, it's about 62 degrees and blowing 30 knots out of the east.
Well, you know what? We're not that different then. It's about 59 here, so I guess we'll take that. And I don't have 30 knots of wind. So you obviously didn't fish today. How's it been this week?
Oh, it's been great. I had one day we went in the back country and we picked away some black drum, red drum, some juvenile Goliaths and some snooks. But most of the days I've been spending on the Patch Reef, which has been great. Where the action's been, so that's where I've been spending most of my time.
Gotcha. Okay, have you heard much from offshore?
Yeah, lot of good king mackerel around. Some good sailfish, still picking away at, and some muttons out there, and catching, releasing some groupers, a lot of yellowtail snappers. So it's been pretty consistent offshore.
All right, Bean, I got a question for you. You're younger than most of our podcasters because most of our podcasters are old men like me. I want to consider the time frame that you've been fishing out of Islamorada just in the last 15 years or so, or 20 years. Is the habitat, not the fishing now, the habitat, has it gotten better, has it gotten worse, or is it about the same?
It's gotten worse.
Okay, what's gotten worse and why?
So it's funny because I've been visiting Islamorada since I was probably 6-7 years old, in the late 90s or so. And I remember we would stay at the Islander Resort for the week, and you can just look down and see a lot of live bottom and a lot of sea life around that. And you just don't see as much of that live bottom nowadays as you used to see back then. And I've recognized that from just when I used to come down here once a year for a week. And I could see how every year progressively that quality has slowly declined. And one thing I will say and recognize is that there used to be a lot of sea urchins down here.
Right.
And there's not any sea urchins anymore. And apparently that is a big sign of quality of live bottom and sea life. So.
Okay. All right. We'll put you down on the worst side. Now, is that because of runoffs, do you think, of civilization, or what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, maybe civilization and constructing, but I think that us being just south of the Everglades, I think that that has a huge part of it, that we're not getting as much fresh water getting naturally trickled in the Everglades as we're supposed to.
Gotcha.
So I think that has a big part of it, that the runoff, is getting pushed through man-made piping canals directly to the east and west of the Everglades. And we're not getting that fresh water going to the Everglades that we're supposed to have. I think that has a huge part of it.
Okay. All right. That's what we wanted to hear. I wish the news was better, but we wanted to get it straight from the source. Brandon, thanks so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely, always.
Captain Bean Storen from down in Islamorada. Hey, before we hop over to the West Coast, let's get a word from D.O.A. I recently had a chance to stop by D.O.A. World Headquarters in Stuart, Florida, and I was not the least bit surprised to see company founder Mark Nichols hard at work on a new fish catching invention. What was shocking to me was that he was working on the original D.O.A. shrimp, the same shrimp he patented in 1985. The stealthiest wintertime bait ever made. The only bait that lands so subtly, so softly that spooky wintertime fish will never hear it coming. Was getting Mark's full attention. What are you doing was the obvious question. Mark looked at me sideways. He said, hey, I've never stopped working on the shrimp. It's got to catch more fish every year. So I've got to make each one better than the last batch. I've now got the production in-house, and that means today's 3 and 4 inch shrimp are consistently the best shrimp D.O.A.'s ever made. You know what? I get it now. The D.O.A. shrimp that fooled 1 million fish in 1985 has had to keep up with the times to keep making your fishing better. It's winter. The water's cold and the fish are spooky. The 2022 version of the D.O.A. shrimp is the stealthiest, most lifelike, and deadliest bait you can throw. All right, time to hit the West Coast. Let's check in with Captain Greg Stamper. Greg, how we doing?
It's windy, Rick, and
Yep.
I'm very cold, and I cannot wait for March.
You don't get cold in Fort Myers very often, do you?
Well, you know what? If I put my heater on in my house, that's pretty crazy, and I've done it more than twice this year. So, yeah, cold.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of glad to see a little bit colder winter anyway. But anyway, let's talk fishing. How's your fishing been?
You know, overall, Rick, we had before this most recent front came in, we had some water that started to clean up, and the fishing got really, really good. I'm sure you've had this happen to you as well, Rick. Have you ever had that day where you're just on that free front? You don't know if it's going to be good, but you go out there and have that crazy, amazing day?
Yes, I remember those fondly.
Yeah, that happened yesterday. So all week long, we've been catching trout. We've been catching some redfish. By the way, the sheep's head are moving into the back bays finally, which
Good.
has been a long time waiting for them. But yesterday we had one of those days where I went out there thinking, we may have missed it, and we absolutely killed it. Trout, threads, sheep's head, everything was there. We caught snook, and we even jumped a small tarpon. So I knew we were on the front of it, and about around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, when the skies turned blue and the high pressure moved in, it all stopped.
Yep, it'll do that. Yep, they can feel those fronts. There's no doubt about it. Greg, I got to ask you a question. All right? You're a lifer down there and been fishing a whole long time like all of us. I know you guys have had a tough time with your habitat, haven't you?
Oh, big time, Rick. Why are you asking me that? That's for sure in my neighborhood.
Yeah. There's some parts of Florida that are doing real good, but what's the big problem in your area? And I know the red tide, but is the red tide natural, or has the discharges from the Everglades made it worse?
Wow. If this was an hour-long show, I could go way deeper, but we'll just do this the quick way. If you had a really nice saltwater tank at home, and I was your buddy, I lived next door, Rick, and all I did was come over and have a few drinks with you and relax. And every day I came over, I dropped 5 gallons of pure fresh water into your saltwater tank. Things don't work out so well.
No.
So we've lost a lot of things because of salinity that shouldn't be so low in certain areas. And for me, for the most part, I can tell you about seagrass problems. I can tell you about algae that's covered them and the sun doesn't let them grow, so they die. I can tell you about oyster bars that were very abundant, no issues there, and now you go there and there are still oyster bars, but the oysters are dead. There's been some issues in our neck of the woods. Now, things are moving in the right direction. I got to tell you that for sure. Red tide, is it natural? Absolutely. Is it a farming big sugar problem? No, it's not. It's a problem that everybody has put their dollars into because we've had septic tanks, we've had runoff, we have pesticides and asbestos and everything else that gets put into our rivers, which those go into the bays and those end up in the ocean, which is our Gulf, and that feeds things. So it's not one person's blame, Rick. It's more of a problem overall that's slowly being dissolved a little bit here and there by actions of, I'll tell you, our governor has done a good job overall in pushing things forward, but we have a long way to go, Rick. If we can get this water moving south all the way like it used to through the Everglades and get filtered, things may be better, but it's not for us, Rick. It's for your grandkids, to be honest with you.
That's right. That's right. You and I have caught our fish. No doubt about that. Well,
you're right about that.
It's the future I worry about. Greg, that's a great report. I think that things are about to warm up for you a little bit. I certainly hope so. I tell you what, our winters may last 6 or 8 weeks, but feels like 10 months to me right now.
Oh, I feel like it's been about half a year. I'm so ready, Rick. I can't wait to talk to you about all these pompano and tarpon and everything else that's going to show up here in about another month.
I want to complain about blowing out my flip-flops, what I want to do. All right, Cap. I might write a song about that. All right. We appreciate it. I'll talk with you next week.
Tight lines, Rick.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report where, boy, I tell you what, they've got troubles with their habitat, and we are headed somewhere else that does too. But first, we want a fishing report from one Captain Ray Markham. Raymond, are you there?
Greetings. I'm here.
How are you, my boy?
A little chilly. It's it's a little cooler than this Florida boy likes.
I don't know. I understand that. It's been colder up here this winter than I'm used to, and I'm kind of glad to see it, but now I want it to go away. It's kind of like when your mother-in-law comes. You're glad to see her, but man, are you happy when she goes away.
I hear you. But, the guys that are getting out, actually, in between some of these fronts and the wind that's blowing 20 miles an hour and all that kind of good stuff, they're doing really well on Sheep's Head. And on a real plus, we've actually seen a few redfish that are kind of flooding in some places where we just haven't had anything going on for over a year now.
Good.
So it's kind of looking a little sunnier, even though it's cool.
Yep. So, well, that is good news. Have you heard anything from offshore to speak of?
Not a whole lot. About the only guys that are getting out are ones that are doing a near-shore trip, maybe 50, 60 feet, and most of them are targeting hogfish, which ain't a bad deal.
No. They can bring me all their extras. Raymond, I got a question. Yeah. I got a question for you.
Sure.
We're all lifers on this show, it seems, and you've been there forever.
Oh, boy.
Man, I can remember some great evenings with you down in Terracea, throwing surface lures on snook and redfish, and mostly me watching you catch them. But man, we had a ball. Tell me about your habitat. Now, has it changed a lot? Is it better than it used to be, or are you guys having a lot of problems?
honestly, it depends where you are. Now, my habitat, if you're going to consider where I fish almost all of Tampa Bay and portions of Sarasota Bay, Manatee River, Terracea. So that kind of covers a little bit of area here. Portions of it are in fair shape, even after all the red tide and all the dumping and everything else that's been going on, and portions of it are in really bad shape. A year and a half ago, we started hearing reports from FWC saying that the seagrass beds in Tampa Bay are very healthy, and even back to the time frame of back in the 50s of what they used to be when water, in my opinion, was at its peak, the best. But I really do disagree with that because I was there. I saw what it was like. And, looking in the water now these days where I used to be able to go in 10, 12 feet of water and see absolutely crystal clear water and read the date on a coin on the bottom, it's tough sometimes looking to see the bottom in 4 to 5 feet. So, we have turbidity, we still have pollution and whatnot. We have too much growth and expansion and building, and we're just destroying the habitat. Everybody loves to be on the water, and that's the attraction here. So, unfortunately, it's not the best thing. If we're stewards of our environment, we'll take care of it. But unfortunately, there's a whole lot of people that let greed and money get in the way.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. I think that's the case everywhere, and we've got to progress. We've got to evolve into better stewards. There's no doubt. I have hope for optimism. I have optimism about Northeast Florida, but there's areas of the state that are really having it tough time, and I think you're one of them. Ray, we appreciate the report ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir, we can. As soon as I get my tow vehicle back from the dealership, I'll be on the water again.
Gotcha. Thank you, Raymond. Our thanks to Ray Markham, who swears he shot more squirrels than William Toney did on their hunt. We'll find out the true story about that, because if you're the mayor of Homosassa, you cannot tell a lie. Talk to me, Mr. Mayor.
I cannot tell a lie. I think I shot one more squirrel than Ray Markham we had a good hunt, and I got 3, he got 2, and at 8:30 the wind picked up and the squirrels left town. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, they'll do that. Now that 3 squirrels doesn't quite replace that big 8-point you were hunting all fall.
No, it didn't. But I beat Ray. That's all that mattered.
Tell me about your fishing.
All right, we had another front come through here earlier in the week, so we're back to Coldville again. But this time, being near the full moon, you can look at some very significant low tides right now. Matter of fact, we could talk about fishing here in a second, but if you would like to learn the terrain up here on the Big Bend, these low tides will give you a bird's eye view of what Florida real estate looks like out there in the Gulf and adjacent waters, because it has been low. So what you want to look for, if it's a calm day, now we may have a couple other fronts coming this week, but when you get that calm weather, we have a great sheep's head bite out there, 8 to 15 foot of water, all along the big profile rocks. So when I say big profile, stuff that's at least coming 3 to 5 foot off the bottom. So bigger rocks, bigger sheep's head, better bite. Using live shrimp, casting right up next to the rock. If it's got a sand ring around it, all the better, because they're laying right around that sand. I know it's an 8-person limit or something like that, but I tell you what, if you never clean sheep's head, you may want to, just keep enough to eat, because it is definitely a chore. And if you got 2 or 3 of you, and you keep like 24 or 25 of them, you'll be sorry there at the end of the afternoon cleaning them things.
Yeah, and the truth is, William, and I hated it back when the size limit was 12 inches, because there was nowhere near enough meat on a 12-inch sheep head to eat.
Oh, absolutely not.
But keep a couple of fat ones for yourself, absolutely. And they don't freeze particularly well. They're much better fresh.
Absolutely. Now, if we get a little bit of warmer weather, which we're looking for right now, got a great sea trout bite, and this is time of year I really like getting them in super shallow water. So go back to where I was talking about all the rocks sticking out, and we're going to have a late afternoon incoming tide here near the end of the week. So those rocks sticking up with the sun beating on them all day, and then you get that cold water, which was down to about 57, 58 today, coming in. Those rocks are just like a sauna to those trout. Those fish will move and get right up on top of those rocks in sun. And, you know, it's pretty cool to see them laying out there. And I pull up real close, and you'll see them. Sometimes the bottom will just shift a little bit, and it could be 100 fish moving at one time. It could be 3 or 4 big ones laying up there. But my favorite bait to target them this time of year is that D.O.A. 5.5 305 glow jerk bait. And I use an owner 3/0 hook right through the nose, tied with a loop knot. So it gives that bait 2 pivot points, one at the knot and one in the nose of the bait that gives it real good action. You can fish it very shallow, and it's just, I just tell folks a twitch, twitch, and a pause. Twitch, twitch, and a pause, and those trout will nail it every time. And now's the time of year where they're out there on those shallow rocks when that tide comes in, sunning and getting what is left of the heat.
Did you say a 3/0 circle hook?
3/0 owner hook.
Owner hook. Okay. All right.
Owner. Yep.
I didn't think you were putting a circle.
No. Some people do, but I think it when I've tried it before with folks who aren't really good at setting the hook, or are used to using circle hooks and not setting the hook, it kind of hinders the action of the bait being the way the hook is shaped.
I couldn't agree more. Let me ask you a quick question, and I'll let you get back to cleaning fish. The habitat in your area, you've been fishing, now not the fish numbers, but the habitat itself. You've been fishing there all your life. Is anywhere near as good as it used to be, better than it used to be, or have we ruined it?
I think that we are just as good here as it was when I was a kid. Wonderful. In fact, our seagrass beds out here are as healthy as they've ever been. The only thing I've seen that our seagrass beds have experienced more because of scalloping in our area is prop scarring. Other than that, our grass is flourishing. And in fact, there's different programs I know right here up in the headwaters of the springs in Crystal River and in Homosassa that they're planting this rockstar eelgrass, which is a freshwater grass but saltwater resilient, that was produced up there at the Duke Energy plant. The septic tanks and things in the river, that are up at our headwaters affected our grass, but we are in the process here in our county of taking those septic tanks out and putting in city sewer, getting that out of here so we don't fertilize that fresh water so much. And it grows a different type of grass. It's a lime gidia or something like that, and it actually shades out our native grass. So then that process right now is about completed. So our river is pretty healthy as far as grass, but our Gulf out here on our flats out to past that state water is about as good as I've ever seen.
That's great news. We haven't heard that from enough places. And in a lot of ways, I feel the same way about Jacksonville and a lot of the things we've done here. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. We got work to do. But, man, I can remember 50 years ago when the paint companies would coat the river with their creosote. Your instinct is always to say, "Oh, the good old days, they were so wonderful." Not always sure that's the case.
Nope. I think our trout fishery is better than when I was a kid. Big trout when I was a kid was 15 inches. Now we're turning back over 20-inch trout just about every trip. So, the good old days, I think, are here now. And us being proactive up here on the Big Bend and protecting what we got, because, our state's not getting any bigger, and we got more and more people moving in. Regulations might have to shrink a little, but the quality of fish are great. Our seagrass and everything like that, as long as we can be proactive and keep any type of pollutants from getting in or curb that before it even happens, I think it'll be here forever and ever.
Love it. Thank you, William, as always.
All right. Talk to you next week.
Captain William Toney with a great report from up in the Big Bend area. Hey, I tell you what, it's time to start out the Panhandle, but before we go, let's get a word from Shimano. There's one thing just about all our podcasters have in common. We rely on Shimano gear when the day is on the line. Whether it's Jim Ross chasing a tarpon with a Saragusa spinner, Alan Sherman catching muttons on his bait runners, Shimano gear is everywhere in Florida. You see, Shimano builds a reel for every fish that swims in Florida, and it seems like every year they come out with new models with names that take me 6 months to be able to pronounce. But you know what? There's also a couple models that have stood the test of time and stand at the very top of the brand even today. If I'm fishing an inshore spinner, be it fresh or salt, you can count on the fact that I'm throwing a Shimano Stratic. That's because it's been around the block. It's caught so many fish, it just never fails. And if there's a blue water boat looking for a sea monster, I can almost guarantee you there's Shimano Tiagras pulling the big fish baits. Why do the best blue water guys count on Tiagras year after year? For the same reason I always throw a Stratic when I need to hook a redfish for my granddaughter. Because when the best day is on the line, you can count on the time-tested Tiagra and Stratic from Shimano. Our thanks to the mayor of Homosassa for a good report. Glad to hear him say that he's happy with his habitat and certainly happy with his fishing. That means it's time to head up into the Panhandle and check in with the captain who is always peachy, Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick, we're doing just peachy tonight. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. Tell me what's going on with your fishing.
Well, the inshore fishery is just, it's kicked off again after the cold fronts we've had move through. But the nice thing is the flounder and sea bass are showing up on our shallow shoals.
Oh, really?
And some friends of mine went out and got a really nice group of flounder and some sea bass, and they sent me a picture of about a 30-inch gag grouper that they had to throw back while they were fishing for sea bass.
Cool. Way cool. What else is going on?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah. Well, not much offshore to report. Things are just now starting to pick back up. March 1st will be the real time for us to get going. We've actually put our boat back together enough that it looks like a boat again. So things are going good.
So when does Red Snapper start for you guys again?
Traditionally June 1st.
Oh, cool.
Right around the 1st of June.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. You're a lifer like all of us are, I guess. How has your habitat around Mexico Beach changed in the time that you've fished it? Is it as good a shape as it used to be? Is it better? What's the word?
Well, Captain Rick, you always got to remember we had a Hurricane Mike.
Right.
So we also have the Mexico Beach Artificial Reef Association here, and it is one of the largest of its kind in the country. Mm-hmm. Over the last 20 years, they've placed, I know we have somewhere between 350 and 360 artificial reef structures within 20 miles of Mexico Beach. So basically, that organization took a desert and made it a fish habitat. Hurricane Michael moved some of that around, especially in the water shallower than 70 feet. So we had a little bump in the road, if you know what I mean. But things are settling down, and that fishing report I just gave you came from some of those artificial reefs with the sea bass and the flounder around them. Wintertime, you can get grouper in there. So my hat's off to that organization, which I'm proud to be a part of.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be distracted. There's an 8-point standing at my feet, or my camera just went off. But no, and you make an excellent point, Kevin. And here's why I say that. Here in Jacksonville, when we first started, when I first started fishing out of here, there was one artificial reef. Now we've got over 200 placements. So at least in our offshore habitat, I think we've improved it. But the argument is, and I got that argument from one of our podcasters tonight, some people believe that all the artificial reefs do is congregate the fish that were there anyway and enable us to catch them. I feel like, no, an artificial reef becomes its own ecosystem. The sponges grow.
Exactly.
The fish spawn there. There's little fish there, so there's big fish there. Help me out. Who's right?
No, I think you're right, because the reality, and where I would argue with that individual, is if you take a flat piece of sandy bottom that there's no structure there, there's no fish there. So you can't tell me that the fish were already there. But if you start putting that small ecosystem out there and it starts growing algae and it starts growing coral and it gets the bait fish around there, then the predators are going to come through. I mean, we've got areas here that were just flat sandy shoals that are now covered with artificial structures, and you go out there and you can actually slam fish, especially in the spring. The sheephead spawn that goes on within 2 miles of our beach is amazing.
That's fantastic. That's great, Kevin. We appreciate it ever so much, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
We will be here next week with our boots on, ready to go.
I'll bet you'll be peachy. I appreciate it, Cap. Talk to you soon. Our thanks to Kevin Lanier for a great Panhandle report. Now, we can't get out of Florida till we go through Destin. That's where one Captain Tyler Massey is. Tyler, are you with us?
I'm here, Rick.
Good deal, buddy. Tell me how your fishing is.
So fishing's actually been pretty good. Inshore fishing, we're still on the same track, but the sheephead fishing has got really good on the bridges the last week or so. Mixed in catching those sheephead, we're catching some black drum, redfish, that kind of stuff. But fishing real tight to the pilings, fishing with a live fiddler crab or a live shrimp has been the best. Light Carolina rig, and it's a sensitive bite with those sheephead on the bridges. But once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. So that's been our main inshore target's been fishing the bridge pilings and that kind of stuff, catching a few sheephead before they make their way to the pass. So that's been our inshore stuff. We've actually had a little bit of surprise fishing. Some of the guys are taking advantage of. I've not made it out there, but there's been a bunch of blackfin tunas running our beach, which is kind of uncommon. It's kind of uncommon this time of year, but we see some in the wintertime. Actually, on Navarre Beach Pier, a few days ago, there was 25 or 30 blackfins caught in the morning, and that's all on jigs, light tackle. It's a lot of fun. So a couple guys chased them in the boats and did catch some blackfin, trolling the beach or casting lures at them. So it probably won't last too much longer, but there are a few out there, and they're still picking off a few, here and there. So that's kind of a neat thing that's happening, this time of year.
What's the size?
They're nice ones. They're 15 to 18 pounds, I'd say.
That's cool. That's way cool.
So it's it's in a couple kayakers are catching them. So it's pretty neat if you want to get out there and give it a shot. It's down there towards Navarre, though. It's not really close to any pass. You got to make a little bit of a run. But if you can go to the pier down there and catch one or something, it'd be a lot of fun. So.
And how many were caught off the Navarre Pier the other day?
They caught 24 or 25 in one morning.
That's way cool. That's
all on
way
lures.
Cool. I'll be darned.
Casting jigs. So.
I'll be darned. Hey, let me ask you a question. You're a lifer. We're all lifers if we're doing this. If we're stuck in this crazy business, tell me about your habitat. Has it gotten better in the time that you've been fishing it, Tyler, or are you seeing a degradation? Are you seeing your habitat going down?
So if we split it into the inshore and offshore, the offshore, there's a lot of focus on building artificial reefs and habitat. So as far as the offshore, in the Gulf. It's probably maybe twice as many wrecks out there was 15 or 20 years ago. So that's a lot of emphasis, and the county and stuff puts a lot of support going towards the artificial reef program and to putting new reefs out there. So that's expanding. The reef fishery is going to be it's gotten better and better and better. Just more habitat equals more opportunity for fish to be out there. So as far as the offshore stuff goes, I'd say it's improving. We've seen there's more structure to fish. There's the fish are going to be spread out, and there's going to be less competition for food and that kind of stuff. So offshore, it's an improvement. Inshore, I think it's there's not as much emphasis put on there in the rebuilding process. We do lose some grass beds, that kind of stuff, and that maybe is hurting. Oyster reefs and grass beds are disappearing. So long-term effects, I don't know, but even in, I've been doing guiding, so this is my 12th year. Even since I've started, you notice some of the grass beds aren't growing back and thriving like they were, that long ago, or even 20 years ago when I was a kid, that kind of stuff. So, I'd say we have one in the positive and one maybe the negative.
Well said. I hope we live in a time where we can figure it out and fix it. Tyler, thank you so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Rick. We'll see you guys.
Captain Tyler Massey wraps up our trip around the state tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Some interesting opinions from the boys. There's no doubt about that. Some of the guys are really suffering under some horrible environmental conditions. We all know the story of Big Sugar in the Everglades and what it's done around the Stewart area and a lot of areas southwest Florida. Anywhere the seagrasses get destroyed, that's a very bad thing. That is the habitat for so much of the entire food chain, all the way from the little tiny newly hatched shrimp all the way up to the big trout that's chasing them around. So we got to do something about our seagrass. Offshore, maybe things are a little better. There's a lot of artificial reefs being built. I'm one of the ones that believes an artificial reef becomes its own ecosystem. Captain Alan Sherman obviously didn't agree with me. He thinks it congregates fish that were already there. So, that's what opinions are. Everybody's got one. But as for the weather, it has been rough. It's going to be rough for a while still. As it gets better, as we get into March, we'll have even more fishing reports. But I think the report of the night certainly had to be 25 blackfin tuna in one morning off of the Nosara Beach Pier. That is a fantastic report. Hey, there's one thing you can count on. We're going to be back next week with another podcast from our guys around the state filling us in on how the fishing is. That action spotter, just like all our action spotters, will be brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Hey, do me a favor. If you enjoy our podcast, please feel free to subscribe to it. We always need more subscribers, but we also want to know how we can improve it. I would like you to contact me, Rick at floridasportsman.com, or just go on the Florida Sportsman Facebook page and say, gosh, you know what? I really like Alan Sherman's report, but I want to know what he's catching the muttons on, or whatever it is that we can do to help you out. We sure would love to. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and I'll see you on the rip.